Hello guys, this is Trinity Storm here and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do 9th part of Naruto the Evolution Bloodline. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
At the same time Naruto charged out of the arena, a swarm of Suna and Auto shinobi charged in, ready to kill everyone and anyone asleep while dealing as much damage to Konoha as possible. Tenten, a petite, lithe figure, appeared in front of them as they dashed forward. She smiled at them in such a seductive manner that most of them were tempted to either take her there and then or become her willing slaves. The weapon mistress's hesitation was more than enough, as her hands quickly withdrew one of her scrolls, and death appeared in the form of hundreds of sharp and pointy implements of death. Kiba formed his claws and charged, dispatching stray enemies, while Haku took care of the main group with a well-aimed Suiruden no Jutsu. Someone shunshined behind Haku, and by the time she realized what had happened, it was too late. A whirling sound followed, and the enemy fell down, bisected at the waist. The sound came from a strange weapon. It appeared to be a short staff with two blades on each end. The weapon twirled in the air before abruptly changing direction and returning to Shino's grasp. Shino was glad he had raised the hem of his coat and was wearing his glasses when Haku blew him a kiss as a thank you. The flush that engulfed him was quite intense. Hanabi shrieked in terror as a Suna nin charged her, kunai raised. Then a killer intent overtook the location, freezing the would-be murderer. When Hanabi and the ninja turned to face the source, they saw Hinata holding her bladed tonfa. What happened next would be burned into Hanabi's memory forever, as Hinata descended like an enraged lioness on the poor idiot who dared to hurt her little sister. Hanabi would later develop a mild case of hemophobia as Hinata executed the Hokage, Rokujunsho with her tonfa, tearing her enemy to shreds. Following the first unlucky fool, the shinobi reconsidered their actions and retreated to try their luck elsewhere. Jiraiya was able to intercept Naruto. The news was dire. The Hubby Teme imprisoned Sandame. Jiraiya was growling at Naruto. You take Lee, Kiba, and Tenten, Jiraiya. They are directly under your command. I recommend that you also protect Hinata's younger sister. The snake bastard will be dealt with by myself and the others. Now get going, perv, or you'll have to repeat our first night together. Jiraiya nodded once before taking Naruto's headset and departing to protect everyone. He took command of the three members Naruto had entrusted him with using said headset. Sensei. Gaki. Don't die on me, he says. The Toad Sage shook any remaining doubts from his mind. His sensei and the Gaki were the same. They would never fail. They couldn't possibly fail. It would have been impossible for them to do so. As she ripped shinobi after shinobi apart with her knives, Anko exclaimed, "We." Enemies fell left and right, bending like a snake and striking faster than a cobra. And who were the idiots who managed to hit her? She killed them first, while the wound they gave her healed, and she added sexiness to her suit. Specifically, more skin to show off. Zabuza, on the other hand, was a massive tornado of death with his massive cleaver. Who needed Kirigakure no Jutsu when they were constantly sparring with a certain blonde blob of energy? These guys moved like snails in comparison to Naruto. Kakashi and Guy stood back to back in the middle of the stadium, surrounded by dozens of enemies. Kakashi lifted his headband, realizing how bad things were. But before he did, Ryu Kami, Flash Hunt. A cry echoed, and a yellow flash obscured the figure who dashed like lightning, gushes of blood and gore gushing from where the figure went. When the flash ended, Kakashi only had one word on his lips. S-sensei? Of course, he was proven incorrect when he noticed the crouching figure. Kiba was there. A shout echoed again before he could recover. Youth. This time, a figure slammed into the opposing shinobi, sending bodies flying like ragdolls. Kakashi and Guy saw a figure wielding some sort of spear-like weapon fall enemy upon enemy through the dust cloud. Both Junin were surprised to see Lee when the figure leapt back from the fight. But what happened next surprised them even more. "Are you slowing down, Ukami?" Lee mocked. "Of course not. Ryushin, how about you? Have you reached the end of your youth? After I had been gracious enough to leave all these jerks for you." Kiba shot back. "So, this means war, doesn't it?" The Junin were trying to figure out what was going on when Kiba kept going, ignoring the charging shinobi. "I suppose it does. So the majority of kills are rewarded?" Lee was about to respond when a female voice called out, and death descended on the approaching shinobi, killing many and driving the others back. Tenten jumped between the two boys. "What are you doing, starting a fight without my permission? I want to play as well." Tenten actually pouted, which elicited laughter from the other two. "So, Maken, you're in as well. Now let's get down to business." Kiba responded, earning a positive nod from both of his teammates. Before the two Junin could argue, the three genin charged and ripped through the enemy lines. Lee swung his green dragon Quan Dao, killing enemy after enemy, an unstoppable blade that tore through jutsu, armor, flesh, and bone alike, an awe-inspiring sight. Kiba, on the other hand, was not far behind, his claws glowing with lightning as he tore into the enemies, never stopping, a blur to most, leaving chaos and blood in his wake. Naruto's contribution to Kiba's fighting style was to never let an enemy recover, to dash from target to target, never hitting more than twice to keep them guessing, and to zigzag randomly so they couldn't focus on you. Tenten, on the other hand, drew a few kunai, and after some hand seals, it was no longer a few kunai, but a high-speed wall of sharpened iron moving towards the enemy. Guy and Kakashi took longer to recover than the three students did to eliminate more than a couple dozen auto shinobi. Tenten interrupted them before they could respond. They are extremely frail. I'd like to go play somewhere else. Are you with me? The other two nodded and vanished, ready to cause more mayhem in defense of their precious people. Guy and Kakashi exchanged stunned looks. Kakashi looked at Guy. Is it my idea, or have these genin outdone us? Please tell me that was a genjutsu. My pride will not take such a blow. Guy fixed his gaze on Kakashi. Kakashi, I'm afraid it was all true. Our young students had left us in the dust. Kakashi's pride shattered with a nearly audible scream. Kurenai was attacked in close combat by a pair of Suna Junin a few roofs further. Assume was about to assist her when something unexpected happened. Kurenai charged the two with a kunai after muttering some words. Asuma feared the worst, knowing that close combat was not Kurenai's strong suit, until he noticed the strangest thing. The two adversaries attempted to dodge onto Kurenai's blades. She had managed to perplex them, causing them to move in the direction of her kunai. Kurenai sighed and turned to face Asuma. Asuma-kun, have your lungs finally collapsed? Asuma muttered something about teasing females but still followed her. Kiba was moving quickly, his trusty companion Akamaru on his back, both looking for suitable prey. Two familiar figures stood on a roof ahead of him. His mother and sister, along with their wounded but still alive companions. Both females had their backs to a wall, growling at their adversary. Kiba's alpha instincts were on display. Nobody ever harms his packmates. Akamaru realized what was going on and charged forward, his fur glowing faintly with chakra. As Akamaru performed the technique, Kiba mouthed a few words. Statiku Makingu means static marking. Akamaru instantly launched a swarm of needle-like hair at the enemy. What's the most important part? The needles were charged with static electricity, which Kiba easily detected. This way, no matter how fast he went, he could easily navigate. If they hit the enemy, he attacked directly. If they didn't, the resulting static field allowed Kiba to easily detect the enemy, because everyone appeared as distortions. Kiba's playground had been invaded by the enemy. As Kiba took out his chained Kama, chakra flared and raced for Kiba's greaves. The two Inuzuka women were taken aback when Akamaru appeared in front of them, only seconds after some sharp needle-like hair had covered the area. But before they had a chance to react. Flash Hunt. Inazuma Gari. Kiba's technique propelled him forward at speeds that a Junin would struggle to match. Combine that with a pair of lightning-charged Kama and the element of surprise. And the enemies began to die as a yellow flash blinded and then hacked them. This was Zabuza's lesson: strike from the shadows and make every blow count. If you can't kill with a single blow, don't attack at all. Temples, arteries, and the spine are all excellent targets for a bunch of hormone-driven idiots. The enemy was dead in seconds. All except one, the obvious leader. What the fuck are you, you fucking brat? These were my fucking underlings. I'm going to fuck you and then fuck these babes. Kiba growled as he turned to face the tyrant. He was debating which way to fuck up the asshole when a smirk escaped his lips. His earpiece had just buzzed, indicating that Jiraiya had given them the all clear to go all out. He took his Kama from the chain and began twirling both at his side, channeling his chakra turned electricity into them. Kiba had two glowing wheels on either side of him in seconds. I usually don't mind if some jerk tries to hit on my sister or mother. They usually take care of that jerk on their own. However, to think that you would do anything to my sister or mother. Dude, I'm doing the fucking, not you. And I'm about to fuck you up. Lightning style. Raiton. Rairouhantingu Paku. Pack of Thunder Wolf Hantings. Kiba twitched his arms, propelling the charged Kama forward. What emerged from the chained Kama, however, was more significant: two yellow, glowing wolves made of lightning charged at the apparent Junin at breakneck speed. Before he died, the poor Nin had barely had time to scream in agony. His skin was covered in third-degree burns that were so severe that some of the skin had melted away, revealing blackened bone. Kiba grinned. Abayo bitch, hey. Raising his hand to his earpiece, he confirmed Jiraiya's message. As his adrenaline continued to rise, he turned to face his family with a feral grin. I've got more prey to hunt, Yane. Come on, Akamaru. Kiba howled before leaving his mother and sister speechless. A few blocks later, some enemies had stopped moving to discuss something about there not being enough people. Idiots had no idea who he was. Kiba crawled over them, his gauntlets allowing him to grasp surfaces without the use of chakra. He began disappearing people with his chain when no one was looking. The 10-man squad was soon reduced to 3 trembling fools. They arranged their bodies in a circle. Fools. Kiba fell silently into their midst. Haku's lesson was still fresh in his mind. Never alert an enemy to your presence by using chakra, sound, or breath. Be as silent as a butterfly while moving as quickly as a snake. 2 of the 3 enemies died with Kiba's claws protruding from their chests a split second later, while the other didn't have time to scream as Akamaru leapt on his throat, tearing his windpipe apart. Kiba despised killing, but these thugs attacked his home and family. There will be no retreat, surrender, or quarter. Just a quick demise. That was the most thoughtful thing he could think of for them. Kiba turned to face the gates. 3 colossal figures reared their heads, and the wall was under attack. Kiba cursed and ran for the gates. According to the explosions, there was more resistance there than anywhere else. A blur streaked the street in another part of Konoha, a polearm in his hand, dealing death left and right. Lee changed the course of the green-tinted blade from collision to the ground, to a low slash that took the legs of a different shinobi, before coming down and decapitating an enemy, continuing its course with a minute tug. Another tug pushed the weapon up, severing another enemy with a diagonal slash from hip to shoulder. The weapon altered its path once more, this time taking the head of the shinobi whose legs were missing. Lee shifted his weight, bringing the massive weapon to bear on the shinobi who was about to strike him from behind. Some civilians stood behind Lee, terrified. It was the hospital area, I swear. Fighting was not permitted here. But then this boy appeared and executed the attacking shinobi. Lee's weapon was now balanced on his shoulder, the grim task completed. Lee simply nodded to the civilian and hospital staff as he saw some Anbu arrive to secure the area. The poor Anbu were staring in horror at the death caused by a single genin. They didn't have time to consider it because more attackers arrived. As they turned to face them, Lee outran them and charged into the group, Quan Dao first. The masked shinobi backed away slowly. Lee fought as if possessed by a demon, his blade striking anyone and everything within range, giving no quarter or peace. More of the attacking force was soon dismembered. Before leaping, Lee saluted the Anbu in sign language. Civilians were torn between relief and fear. Sure, the strange kid was gone, but that kid had just saved them. They were all hoping he'd be fine. Rushing forward, occasionally slaying any enemies he encountered, Lee arrived at a familiar restaurant, or more accurately, a ramen stand. He saw Ichiraku Ayame and Tucci, both armed with what appeared to be kitchen knives and a frying pan, defending something from a group of what appeared to be malformed auto shinobi, bestial features dominating their face and body. Lee heard a whimper behind them and realized they were protecting children. It wasn't widely known, but Lee grew up an orphan, despite knowing who his parents were. As a result, few things irritated him more than seeing children suffer harm. One of them was witnessing the injury of a friend or a friend's friend. This was happening right now, as one of the assailants threw a kunai at Ayame, lightly injuring her but forcing her to drop her weapon. Lee's blood boiled as he sped ahead, his body acting as a shield against the incoming jutsu. Zankuha. Airwaves decapitating. Ryu no Hata. Means, dragon's skin. The jutsu collided with Lee, but it did nothing except cut his haori and tear away Lee's bandages, revealing his muscles. As raw, cold fury coursed through him, the boy's head ducked. Just then, Jiraiya's command to go all in came to him. They were screwed. Lee's head snapped up, and the expression on his face chilled the assailant's blood. Lee had only recently begun to use non-physical energy. Physical energy was used to boost the user's strength and abilities. What about spiritual energy, one might wonder? Lee used simple spiritual energy for two purposes. Either to block genjutsu, which he became very adept at, or to produce an effect similar to ki overdose. Instead of killer intent, Lee's body radiated raw power, a sense of majesty, of simply being superior to the enemy. The beastified attackers were overcome with a strong desire to flee. With their Byakugan activated, Hyuga would later report seeing a dragon roar and coil around a person's body. While the enemy was terrified, Lee gripped his Quan Dao tightly and proceeded to slaughter them like pigs in a slaughterhouse. Lee shifted his aura from menacing to warm and soothing, as if nothing could ever hurt them. As an Anbu group landed, he gave them a reassuring smile. He directed them to take the people somewhere safe without looking at them. When Lee turned around and they saw his face, a new Anbu recruit tried to question him. The recruit wisely kept quiet and followed the command. Lee walked out of the ramen shop and looked at the gate. A cloud of dust and smoke obscured three shapes. Lee felt compelled to curse. He accelerated, Quan Dao secured in his waist holster. Tenten leapt into the air near the academy, twisting majestically and raining death on unsuspecting shinobi. As she approached the landing zone, her hand lashed out and some ninja wire lashed out, grabbing a nearby pole. Tenten landed with that pole in hand, a blade quickly digging itself into an auto chunin. The wire cut the pole, causing it to fall on another unlucky fool. Tenten spun as she landed, launching a pair of kunai at an incoming nin, this time embedding each into the fool's eyes. Ignoring the looks of surprise she drew from some allied chunin, she made her way to the academy, a place where there would undoubtedly be some fighting. When she arrived, she saw Iruka fighting off some enemies and remembered what Naruto and Haku were always for. You can become truly powerful when you have someone precious to you. Iruka appeared to have found many such people, as he demonstrated incredible skill not only in defending the children, but also in taking down reckless enemies who wouldn't hesitate to kill the children with a missed jutsu. Iruka, on the other hand, was clearly tiring quickly. Tenten dashed off to see her former sensei. She took out a pair of collapsible Fuma shurikens she had borrowed from the Uchiha clan, drawing one of her faithful scrolls. She actually borrowed them. Just don't tell anyone. She quickly tied them up with shinobi wire and let them fly. Her fingers twitched and moved as she guided the two colossal weapons of death through a swath of dead bodies. Tenten's Behead attack had taken out 5 enemies in a matter of seconds. She quickly let go of the shuriken of Flying Doom in order to withdraw a katana. Sure, it wasn't Muramasa, who always sent shivers down her spine when fighting, but this katana would suffice to take down these idiots. The temporary distraction had also allowed Iruka to use one of his own techniques, Kage Kunai no Jutsu, to strike some of the stunned enemies. 3 people died as a result of the jutsu, while the rest were alive but injured. Tenten had an easy prey. Konohamaru and his classmates were astounded by Tenten's ability, which appeared to them as a silver dance. Moegi felt as if she had discovered her idol in kunoichi life. However, Konohamaru, like most boys and even their sensei Iruka, was more drawn to Tenten's legs. The chunin gulped and averted his gaze. It wouldn't pay to irritate this kunoichi. She looked like Anko's student, if that's possible. For a long time, Iruka had no idea how correct this assumption was. Anko was, in fact, Tenten's teacher. She taught her how to be happy about being a girl while also expressing her feminine side without being slutty or weak. Anko had also shown Tenten how to defeat enemies much larger than herself by using finesse and grace rather than raw strength and brawn. The exercises for Anko's taijutsu style also aided the development of the 3 kunoichi under her care. With the path clear, Iruka led the children to safety, knowing full well that he couldn't defend them like that again. Tenten had said few words to the chunin, but the message was clear. Konoha was under attack, and they needed to move quickly. Tenten quickly left her job to hunt down more enemies. After all, she was in a fight with Kiba and Lee, right? She carried the kunoichi pride with her everywhere. Tenten began to notice more and more of these bestial shinobi as she leapt from building to building. They were all wearing the auto symbol somewhere on their bodies, so it was clear who they worked for. They were faster, tougher, and more powerful than the majority of shinobi. It's a shame they weren't as astute or as perceptive. Perhaps they would have survived her skirmishes. A squad of Anbu had cornered her ahead of her. Why? Because not only were some of these beast-like thugs able to absorb chakra through touch, but they also had a very powerful shinobi to protect them. Tenten didn't know who he was, but the fact that he had covered his entire body in stone and still managed to move meant he was fine. On top of that, he appeared to be quite adept at protective jutsu. She was contemplating how to best dispatch them when Jiraiya's green light to unleash her full power buzzed into her ear. Could Jiraiya be referring to her ability to free Muramasa from his sheath? Could he be implying that she can now fight properly? Tenten assumed that because Jiraiya had said, "Go all out," she could draw her black sword. She burst out laughing as she landed in front of the Anbu group. Her right thigh tattoo was revealed when her hand moved the scroll case. Muramasa's sheathed form was in her hand after a chakra pulse. Tenten could tell the demonic blade was content. It made me happy that it could finally cut to kill. Tenten drew the magnificent form of Muramasa from its sheath with slow deliberate motions. Tenten muttered something only the Anbu could hear as a black and red aura covered the blade. Onigiri. Tenten dashed forward, and a stone wall rose to greet her. Her blade flashed, and the wall vanished. A foe in front of her, 2 to her right, and 1 leaping above her. Tenten made a small spin to take out the 2 on her side before rising up in an impaling motion as Muramasa's blade flashed horizontally. The 1 in front of her and the 2 to her right were cut in half and were still fighting for their lives. Muramasa impaled the 1 on top through the heart. Tenten's face was covered in blood. Her smirk shifted. It grew more evil and bloodthirsty. She licked the blood like it was fine old wine. Tenten's gaze fell on the remaining enemies, who gulped. Tenten charged into the battle, blade first, with a sound somewhere between a laugh and a demonic warcry. They attempted to block, but the blade passed through. They attempted to dodge, but she was too fast, and they attempted to run, but she cut them down. Tenten's glowing blade transformed an ambush into a massacre. An enemy's massacre, the Anbu group blinked. The only one left alive was the group's apparent leader, the Iwa Nuke Nin who had defended them. Tenten's onigiri bounced off of him as he used a massive amount of chakra to defend against it. Tenten grinned. Good. You can deal with Muramasa's most vulnerable attack. Let's see how you handle this. Tenten's Yukai flared, enveloping her in a double helix of power. The blue helix wrapped itself around Tenten, while the red and black helix gathered around her before transforming into a roaring flame. The flame then engulfed the black sword. Tenten drew her sword in front of her and held it horizontally to the side of her face. Tenten thrust her blade forward as the dragon on the blade began to glow red, almost blinding the Anbu. Maryu Enden, Onikatan. Devil Dragon Fire Blast in demonic fire style. A dragon-like blast of blood red fire with a black core erupted. The fire only lasted a second, but it melted everything within a 15-foot radius. The man had no chance. He quickly became a charred skeleton with a pool of molten rock at his feet. Tenten wiped her brow with a rag. It was exhausting to use Yukai. Even after a month, she could only use this technique twice before passing out. She turned to face the Anbu and made a peace sign. Many of them suspected Tenten was bipolar. Tenten couldn't care less what they thought. They would be strange to say the least if they had a demonic sword in their hands that sent them feelings of pleasure when cutting stuff. Tenten turned to face the gates, noticing the 3 menacing figures in them. She addressed the Anbu squad. I hope you're not too tired yet, boys. We've got a big one there, and I've got first dibs. But I'll need your help because there's bound to be more over there. We'll be fine if you don't take my kills. Tenten's smile was as innocent and sweet as one might expect from a 14-year-old civilian girl. The black sword in her hand, on the other hand, painted a different picture for the poor Anbu. Without waiting for an answer, she rushed forward to what could be the most difficult battle she had ever faced. Kiba, Lee, and Tenten, the 3 genin, rushed to the point of attack, all meeting on the same roof. 3 massive snakes raged in front of them, clearly summons. Who could call them? Orochimaru, everyone's favorite snake using bastard. Suna and Otto Shinobi dashed through the opening in the walls. The 3 friends exchanged glances before rushing forward. They had an unspoken agreement that whoever killed their snake first would win. Kiba took the left one, his mother and sister attempting to hide in his wake. Kiba nodded and popped a soldier pill before handing Akamaru the other. Kiba readied himself by pulling out his chained kama and wrapping it tightly around him. Before securing his kama on his hands, Kiba flew into some hand seals. It was one of the things he had learned over the course of the month. While he and Akamaru couldn't transfer chakra, Akamaru could assist in manipulating it, making it easier for Kiba to control. Kiba's chakra surged through the chain, illuminating it with a blue sparking light. Kiba's own control over Raiden chakra, aided by Akamaru's presence, kept the electricity from striking the pair. Thunder Wolf Armor, Rairu Yoroi. Kiba used chakra to power his legs and jumped onto the snake. Said monstrosity bit the bait and attempted to devour Kiba alive. As his mother and sister screamed, Kiba smirked. Kiba had been devoured by the snake. Sume and Hana were terrified. Kiba couldn't possibly have died. They mocked him, but he was still family, and he couldn't have died. Not so quickly. Kiba's voice could be heard from within the snake's mouth. Rairu. Kyouzuu Arashi. Thunder Wolf Storm. The snake lit up like a Christmas tree in response. Why? Because the chains that were wrapped around Kiba were forcefully unwound. The resulting force, combined with Kiba's abundance of chakra as a result of the pill, made for an absolutely incredible spectacle. If only someone could see past the blood and gore. The explosive force with which the chains moved shredded the snake's head in seconds, killing it. Of course, gravity took over and the massive being fell, crushing many at first and more later due to the shock, which caused it to move even after death. Kiba landed on its head and yelled triumphantly. Meanwhile, Lee was dodging enemies, or more accurately, dodging their collapsing bodies as he killed them without pausing. He whipped the Quan Dao forward some distance before the snake's form, causing it to spin midair as it approached the snake. Lee's aim was accurate, and the snake was struck below the eye, drawing the snake's attention to Lee's charging form. Lee smiled as he pumped all of his remaining physical energy into his feet. As he vanished from most people's sight, he reappeared in front of the snake, twisting in midair to deliver a kick. Dragon Tail. Ryu Shippo. Boom. Crack. Smash. A booming sound deafens those in the snake's path, Lee's incredible strength breaking the sound barrier. The kick was so powerful that it broke the summoned snake's neck. Due to a snake's natural flexibility, that should give you a pretty good idea of how difficult that is. Of course, with the snake's neck broken, the beast collapsed, crushing those unfortunate enough to be beneath it. Lee landed beside his Quan Dao, picked it up, twirled it around him, and assumed a ready stance. Tenten was having problems at the same time. Her previous method had taken a toll on her. Couple that with the worthless scum in front of her who was preventing her from reaching her goal, and she was irritated. Muramasa's representation in her mind nodded. He had to assist his wielder. He'd give her back what he'd taken. Tenten's world froze with a nod of his hand, and nothing moved. Muramasa appeared in front of her eyes, his voice echoing. Congratulations, my wielder. Even when you are tired, you do not give up, and even when you are disabled, you are proud. While you rely on my power, you do not allow it to enter your mind. Good. I took a large amount of your yukai when I first bonded with you and stored it. If you could control me, I knew it would come in handy one day. Take it back and decimate the fools who stand in our way. Tenten barely had time to nod before time moved on. Tenten's blade glowed, and two long ribbons emerged from the bottom, one pure black and the other blood red. Tenten took a small amount, knowing they were representations of how much yukai she could draw, and rushed forward at an impossible speed for most chakra users. She jumped high in the air after reaching her snake goal, using the snake as a springboard to jump even higher. She reversed her motions and pointed her blade at the snake's head after leaping higher than the snake's head. Her yukai flared back into the blade. Tenten smiled downright evilly. Maryu Enden, Onikatan. Devil Dragon Fire Blast in Demon Fire style. Tenten's demonic jutsu blasted the snake's head, leaving nothing but a charred skeleton in its place, before it collapsed and shattered on the ground, sending lethal shards of insanely hot bone piercing through anything in these blade flashed as she landed on the great snake's skeleton. A swarm of shinobi and twisted scientific experiments were preparing to charge the three exposed genin. They didn't have time because three enormous toads landed in front of them. Jiraiya stood on a nearby collapsed house, his face cold and grim. Nobody messes with Konoha, least of all that snake bastard Orochimaru. On his signal, a counterstrike of every Chunin, Junin, and Anbu rushed out of the shadows. The battle's tides had shifted. It's time for the push to become a shove. Already, the astute have turned tail and fled. Lee, Tenten, and Kiba soon joined Jiraiya. The group's attention was drawn to the cage-level battle taking place in the arena. Their hearts pounding, they all thought the same thing. Don't leave us hanging. Orochimaru stood before what could be his demise. His old sensei, aided by the dreaded Namikaze brat. Naruto raised his hands, palms open towards Orochimaru, two clones hovering over Naruto's own. Hiruzen charged Orochimaru at speeds the snake Sennin couldn't believe, and Naruto's chakra began to rise. The Diamond Staff, which was the Monkey King Enma, arrived, and Orochimaru had no time to believe, only act. Naruto stormed out of the arena after speaking with Jiraiya and entrusting him with the three rookies, Lee, Kiba, and Tenten. He landed next to Hinata's location, shielding Hinata's younger sister. Hina-chan. Is your sister okay? Hello, Arrow Sennin. Please come over here and get Hanabi to safety. Hanabi resented being treated like a child. However, recalling Naruto's humiliation of Neji, as well as Naruto's feral appearance, she reconsidered. Jiraiya landed next to the Genin couple, looked at Hanabi, and nodded, the meaning obvious. Jiraiya jumped off, grabbing Hanabi and handing her over to an Anbu squad that had been sent specifically for this purpose, namely civilian evacuation. After all, it wouldn't benefit anyone if a foreign dignitary was injured because he wasn't escorted to safety. Hinata and Naruto shifted their gaze to the shadows. Come on out. Oto-sama. And you'd better have a good explanation for leaving my Imouto here instead of taking her to safety with you. It wasn't so much what Hinata said as it was how she said it. I better like your answer or you can kiss your eyes goodbye. Hiashi emerged, a glum expression on his face. I am not a monster, Hinata, despite the fact that I was never kind or caring to you or your sister. With you demonstrating a significant increase in skill, I reconsidered your position as clan heir, as I'm sure all elders would. As a result, we've reached a dead end. If you prove to be stronger than my youngest, you will inherit the clan. If not, you will be assigned to the cadet branch. I have long hoped and tried to avoid this situation. However, because you have demonstrated exceptional skill, I must now seal one of my daughters. Worse, I am obligated by family law to select the strongest heir. I left Hanabi here to see if she was worthy of being the clan's heiress. She clearly isn't, based on her reaction to an enemy. Though I was present to protect her if things had gone differently, Hanabi was never in danger from Konoha's enemies. Even after Hinata spent time explaining everything to him, Naruto still grumbled at the cruelty of the Hyuga clan. Hinata, on the other hand, was not as composed. So you'd sell one of your own daughters into slavery, selecting the strongest physically as the clan's heir rather than the best for the clan. Then you wonder why I despise your guts. Get out of my face, father, and start fighting. If I ever find you, or any other motherfucking piece of worthless shit putting my little sister in danger, I'm going to kill you all. Got it? Now get out of my way, you worthless excuse for a human being. Hinata's Raigen's touch erupted from the excess chakra coursing through her, fully prepared to fulfill her threat. Hiashi, knowing full well that he shouldn't mess with anyone, chose to cut his losses and go fight. After all, he wouldn't put a potential heir's safety in the hands of any Anbu. They were not Hyuga, plain and simple. Meanwhile, Naruto and Hinata launched an attack on a group of enemy shinobi rushing through the gates. Hinata and Naruto fought together, almost in a lover's embrace, as they slowed and stopped the surge of shinobi into the arena, remembering their lessons from when they first became a team. Naruto used Hinata as much as another limb, because they were so familiar with each other's fighting styles that they could predict their partner's movements and attacks. With Naruto as the shield, taking all blows without even slowing down, and Hinata as the sword, her lethal tonfa disabling and killing attackers left and right, it was impossible to approach them safely from less than 10 feet away, about 3.6 meters. Naruto spun around, Hinata using his momentum to launch herself at an enemy, her tonfa striking well before the enemy's kunai could, only to be followed by Naruto, who took advantage of the gap in the attacking force to land in the midst of his enemies. Claws flashed and blood flew as Naruto spun once more, finishing by kneeling so that Hinata could use him as a springboard and leap over him, surprising everyone. Naruto jumped into Hinata's waiting embrace, his claws transforming into blades that stabbed the fools behind her, even as her tonfa disabled those behind Naruto. The two hugged before spinning around, their weapons ripping through armor and flesh alike. A cat-faced Anbu and her team watched as the two genin worked together like clockwork, sending shivers down their spines. Nobody knew how the two kids managed to make this lethal fighting style look so much like an intimate dance. However, the dance was cut short when Zabuza and Anko landed in front of the two genin, who quickly took advantage of the enemy's surprise to split up and fight separately. Hinata's tonfa were bladed blurs that struck an enemy and attacked not only flesh and bone, but also internal organs and the chakra system. Naruto dashed through the enemy in an irregular zigzag pattern, making it impossible to predict where, how, and who he would attack next, a flaw that would prove fatal for the Auto Shinobi, as Naruto's claws could easily shred their armor and strike their most vulnerable locations. With Zabuza's impressive fighting style and Anko's superior speed and flashing blades, the enemy had no chance. Behind the first group appeared another, this time made up of not only more members, but also what appeared to be an insane scientist's worst nightmare. Orochimaru appeared to have broken open the cages of his experiments. Hinata and Zabuza both jumped back, adopting an unusual stance. While Zabuza stabbed it in front of him, Hinata stuck her tonfa to the ground and placed her feet on it. As the enemy approached, the pair performed a series of identical hand seals before inserting the molded chakra into their weapons. Santorudan no Jutsu, please. Water technique. Triple-headed dragon blast. Both of them shouted. Before the ground around the two shinobi exploded with water, chakra raced from Zabuza's hands and Hinata's feet into Zanbatu and Tonfa. To the ANBU's surprise, it wasn't a simple Suidan jutsu, but what appeared to be an A-rank jutsu, as three absolutely massive water dragons erupted from the water beneath the two shinobi before launching themselves at the enemy. Naruto and Anko, who were holding the line at the time, jumped away in time to see the water dragons slam into the attacking force. Cries of pain and broken bone emanated from the chaotic mingling of water, blood, bone, and flesh, as the water pushed the enemy shinobi through several walls. Hinata and Zabuza exchanged high fives. Meanwhile, Asuma and Kurenai were whittling down the list of stray shinobi, slackers, and solo ISTs. They had been paired up in a number of missions and knew each other's fighting patterns very well, at least Kurenai did. Asuma couldn't figure out when she learned half of the things she used. Sure, she didn't reveal anything he didn't know she could do with him next to her, but the way she used them, for example, the fact that she didn't shy away from combat or back off every time someone came within kunai's reach, seriously perplexed the Sarutobi clan member. He had no idea she was half as skilled with her kunai as she was. Her scathing remarks hurt even more than usual. Asuma-kun, you're the man of the pair, so man up and do your job. Do I really have to do everything by myself, or have your lungs given out yet? Kurenai mocked. What's the deal with her and smoking? Asuma wondered before getting back in line and freeing her from the group of kunoichi who were attempting, but failing, to kill her. In another part of the arena, Haku and Shino were fighting Chunin while attempting to protect the rest of Konoha 9, namely Sakura, Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji. Sakura and Ino, at least, as the Nara and Akamichi heirs held their own. They weren't strong enough to defeat the enemy, but they could hold them off until reinforcements arrived. Shino-kun. Please put up a barrier. Before jumping back, Haku exclaimed. In response, Shino released roughly half of his insects, forming a nearly impenetrable wall. Those who dared to pass through would be quickly depleted of chakra and poisoned, while weapons and jutsu would be stopped by the swarm. Haku prepared herself behind him with a couple of Futon jutsu. Because ice was her specialty, she had never worked with Futon techniques before Naruto came along and assisted her. She still had issues with some of them, but she could get by. Haku nodded at Shino and counted to 3 before swiping her hands forward. Daikei's Rin, Futon. Wind style. Fantastic wind ring. The wind jutsu flew at waist height, surprising the enemy, who didn't expect 2 invisible blades to rush at them from behind a wall of bugs. A couple were killed, while the rest dodged using Kawarimi no Jutsu, replacement technique, which we all know and hate, love. Before they could attack again, Haku had already released a pair of chakra strings, allowing her to not only sustain the wind rings for a longer period of time, but also easily shift their trajectory. It didn't take long for the enemy to figure out what was going on and try to kill Haku before she killed them. But it wasn't to be, as Shino charged first. With his weights removed and chakra levels rising due to the lack of parasitic insects, he charged at full speed. What happened next made Sakura and Ino squeal like little girls, while Shikamaru and Choji turned green. Shino dashed between 2 foes, ready. Shino made 2 pivots and a full rotation, his right digging itself into the back of the enemy's neck, cutting his head with the Futon chakra running through the blade, while his left ripped open his partner by attacking the vulnerable area beneath the ribcage. Blood spurted, but it didn't stop Shino, who was unleashing the full power of his swarm at the same time. Insects literally crawled out of the woodwork. The enemies were no match for the Nara, Akamichi, and Yamanaka clan heads, much to the relief of the 2 genin. The team gathered around Naruto and Hinata as the village's Junin were mobilized, rushing for the location of the Hokage. Flashback to the start of the invasion. Orochimaru laughed evilly as his shinobi rushed into the village, finally allowing him to kill Sarutobi. He greeted his old sensei, throwing away his disguise because he knew it wouldn't help him, as his bodyguards moved to set up the barrier. Sarutobi simply raised an eyebrow in response. Sarutobi, who appeared calm and collected on the outside, was furious on the inside. To murder a man and skin him in order to use his skin as a disguise. How far had his once adored student fallen? Naruto-kun was correct. You were preparing to invade. I hope Suna and Otto are aware that you will betray them. You betray everyone, including your own subordinates. Orochimaru laughed. Subordinates are nothing more than tools in my eyes. If a tool is broken, it should be discarded. Would you keep a broken kunai or replace it with a new one? It's the same thing. Sadness shook Sarutobi's head. That was also stated by 2 missing nin. Naruto-kun and this village had an impact on them. They are now happily residing here, and oh, there they are, decimating your forces. Indeed, Zabuza's distinct form stood out from the crowd, his massive cleaver devouring heads, arms, and legs alike, an unstoppable tornado of death. Orochimaru was irritated by this development, but he didn't give it much thought because he knew he would be brought down eventually. Everyone else is the same. It makes no difference, sensei. They don't matter. After all, I am so far superior to that garbage that I don't even think they deserve to be mentioned. After all, I've deceived even death. Sarutobi's pupils constricted. What exactly do you mean, Orochimaru? What heinous crime have you committed? Oh, Jiraiya doesn't realize? After all, his spy network is extremely capable. As I previously stated, I've deceived death itself, but that's a story for another time. Orochimaru quickly regurgitated his Kusanagi sword, the blade gleaming dangerously. Sennin, the snake, rushed at his sensei in the same motion, hoping to at least injure him. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, as Sarutobi's reflexes remained as sharp as ever despite his aging body. He predicted what Orochimaru would do before Orochimaru even considered it. "Well, I think it's time for a long overdue spanking session, Baka Deshi, foolish apprentice," said the old Kage. Hiruzen Sarutobi pushed a tiny amount of chakra into the amulet he wore around his neck with these words. After a flash of light, a puff of smoke, and the sound of tearing clothing, Orochimaru was no longer fighting an old man, albeit Kage. Orochimaru was now up against the shinobi god, the professor, the man who had mastered, not just learned, every non-clan technique in Konoha. Sarutobi made a cracking motion with his neck, feeling his joints return to their original positions. Sarutobi's confident grin could be felt from behind the face mask as he did the same with his fingers. He laughed when he saw Orochimaru's shocked expression. "What? Did you really believe I wouldn't work on anything after you left? Baka Deshi. You're always putting me down. However, I must express my gratitude to Naruto-kun for this. After all, he's the one who created this work of art for me. Now, shall we dance, little brat?" said Sarutobi, taking a fighting stance. Orochimaru had a part of him that wanted to cry. These were the exact words Sarutobi had spoken to him when he accepted his team's challenge. He heard more words right before being beaten to a pulp than even Salamander Hanzo. In less than an instant, Orochimaru had to dodge a barrage of explosive kunai that his sensei had somehow managed to unseal from somewhere. The Sennin didn't even have time to think about how ridiculous it was to put a ceiling space within a ceiling space before he was forced to dodge once more. This time, it was molten rock speeding through the air. Sandaime was summoning high-ranking jutsu from nowhere. Orochimaru landed and performed a few handseals before releasing a glowing red snake. His version of the Uchiha clan's Kaiten Jutsu. Sarutobi, on the other hand, smirked and kicked. However, instead of dust, an extremely fast-moving burst of water arrived. It hit the snake, causing it to explode in the dense fog. Orochimaru's stunned expression didn't have time to show before another highly pressurized stream of water hit him on the chest. The Anbu group was gaping outside the barrier. This was a cage-level battle. Their involvement would be counterproductive. They were useless. A new recruit on the team simply stared, so that was a cage-level battle. Or, at the very least, a cage against what appeared to be a brat, based on Sarutobi's treatment of his ex-apprentice. Inside the barrier, Orochimaru had had enough and regurgitated a torrent of snakes, each with a kusanagi sword in their mouth. He expected his sensei to dodge, only to be attacked again, giving him the upper hand in this game. Orochimaru, on the other hand, never expected his sensei to simply raise his arm, as if expecting the snakes to stop. What happened next completely terrified the snake user. Of course, his snakes veered, as if an invisible wall was blocking their path, forcing them to stab the ground rather than his sensei. From behind his mask, Sarutobi nearly fell to the floor laughing at Orochimaru's stunned expression. The magnetic field had stopped the Kusanagi snake attack, thanks to Naruto's defensive measures. Orochimaru had the uneasy feeling Sarutobi had simply raised an eyebrow. Damn that mask. Hearing his sensei ask if he had anything else as useless really irritated him. Orochimaru raised his weapon and charged the calm Sarutobi once more, this time with a battle cry. The two clashed repeatedly, with Sarutobi's skill proving superior to Orochimaru's power. Hiruzen made a mental note to thank Naruto for the weapons hidden inside his armor. He had truly stored enough explosives to take on a battalion and escape relatively unscathed. Orochimaru grew tired of being treated as a child, his powerful Kusanagi proving too slow to harm Sarutobi. So he decided to use his ultimate jutsu, his trump card, his hidden ace. Jumping back, he smirked evilly at Sarutobi and began making handseals quickly, knowing Sarutobi wouldn't give him a second chance. He finished them by placing his hands on the floor. Edo Tensai, Kuchios. Call forth the impure world resurrection. Sennin, the snake, yelled, his vile chakra erupting. Take a look, Sensei. The power that triumphed over death. My strength. Now get up. Hokage from the past. Ha ha ha. Rise and obey me as if you were my pet. In horror, Sarutobi watched as the coffins containing the deceased Hokage who had served before him rose. He drew as many incendiary paper bombs as he could, tied them to some explosive kunai, and threw them as quickly as he could. Orochimaru noticed the attack and prepared a few Tsuchi Bunshin, mud clone, to intercept it. The clones sacrificed themselves to minimize damage, but the aged Kage still managed to destroy the last coffin, the most important coffin. Naruto's father, the Yondaime Hokage, was entombed in this coffin. Sandaime noticed something outside his village for what could be the last time. Naruto and his team were intently watching the fight, the desire to fight visible in their eyes and set jaws. Hiruzen sighed, knowing he might never see them again. That is, until he noticed Naruto make an odd motion, raising his hand to his left bicep. Why would he do it, thought the elderly Kage. That is, until he remembered what was underneath the cloth. Sarutobi grinned. So you believe that simply bringing in my own mentors will change everything? What naive to copyright. I thought I was teaching you better. Orochimaru laughed. You did. But even you can't beat us right now. Don't you think 3-on-1 has always been rather decisive? After everything my teammates and I did? True, true, true. However, it appears that you have overlooked something. Specifically, the fact that I'm not struggling alone. The will of fire is still strong, Baka Deshi. Sandaime raised his left bicep, summoned his chakra, and pumped it through. Sandaime's chakra raced to his fingertips and beyond, passing through the armor and encountering power lines. The lines glowed a soft blue as they fell into them like water through a canal, the chakra taking form and shape from the pattern. A cloud obscured Sandaime's form. Finish the flashback. Naruto gave his adopted grandfather a megawatt smile, indicating that he had received the message. Hinata, Haku, Zabuza, Anko, Shino, and Kurenai all looked grim, as if the battle ahead would be difficult. From the seal on each member's left bicep, chakra surged into them. Their vision was blurred and their forms were clouded. The smoke was blown away in an instant, and the group was met with a new scene. Sarutobi's wise voice spoke from behind the group. Have you seen Orochimaru? I don't have to make any sacrifices. They arrived on their own accord. Why? They respect because they do not fear. You could never do that. Neither I nor they will perish today. While Naruto was thinking, he quickly turned to his team. You take on Naidame-sama, his specialty is water jutsu, so you have a better chance. You've got Showdown, Kurenai, Anko, and Shino. Keep an eye out for his Mokaton. Gigi and I are skinning a snake. Before bursting into action, the group nodded collectively. At the same time, the two previous Hokage burst forth, forced to obey by Orochimaru's jutsu. Naruto felt sorry for Orochimaru. I pity you, Orochimaru, you were so engrossed in your obsession that you forgot what true strength was. You were your own undoing. Do you realize, Orochimaru, that your summons will fail? Do you understand why? Because attacks that are hesitant in any way will not work on us. We're going to kill you, Orochimaru, for the pain you'll cause if we let you live. As Naruto charged Orochimaru, claws extended at the sides, no more words were exchanged. Naruto was a blur without his restraints. Sarutobi had taken the time to summon Enma the Monkey King behind him. Enma observed the fight and realized what was going on. It was time for the master to correct his errors. Enma transformed into the diamond staff form without further ado. Haku, Hinata, and Zabuza charged at Naidame, their weapons drawn. The resurrected Hokage began fighting with a barrage of taijutsu attacks, as if testing their abilities. Zabuza, the most experienced of the three, charged first, intending to bear the brunt of the attacks. Zabuza deflected most of the blows, using his Zanbatu as a shield, using the skills he honed through years of fighting and going up against Naruto's unimaginable speed and strength. Knowing that defending alone would not win the fight, Zabuza used his Kubikuri Honcho as a pole to unleash a vicious kick, knowing that Hinata and Haku would cover him. After blocking the kick, Nidame was attacked by Haku. Haku's chained crescent blade whirled through the air, its movements guided by Haku's water manipulation. It sped through the air before wrapping itself around Cage. Haku immediately sent a chakra blast to freeze him, only for the Nidame to collapse into a puddle of water. The blue-armored Cage appeared behind Haku and attempted to knock her out quickly, only to be thwarted by Hinata's quick tonfa. Nidame shifted his weight from his hands to his feet, kicking Hinata in the undefended side. Haku moved quickly to block it, while Zabuza appeared behind Nidame, his Zanbatu quickly moving to take Nidame's head. Their target vanished into a puddle of water once more, while the real Nidame appeared above them, making head seals. Nidame's jutsu was activated before they could defend or flee. Daibakufu no Jutsu, Sweeten. Great explosion technique in water. Zabuza took the first blow, while Hinata and Haku placed their respective weapons at his side. They began absorbing his jutsu as it came, channeling chakra into the storage seals. The technique was weakened as a result, but it still came at them with enough force to break them apart. The Nidame's blue form landed in their center, hands holding a kunai before flying away to Hinata. He was so focused on Hinata's prone form that he didn't notice her going through hand seals or Haku moving her weapon. A puff of smoke obscured his target at the last moment of his charge, just before he thrust his weapon into Hinata's neck. Tobirama was impaled in the chest by a long katana before he could react. Haku, who had just been replaced by Hinata, pushed her chakra into the freezing array of her sword, using its power to solidify the resurrected Cage. The Nidame's form was shattered as the ice block containing him cracked and broke. All three of them exhaled a sigh of relief, having caught him off guard before he unleashed his true power. It was ironic, because Nidame was the one who always said, "You should never underestimate your enemy, no matter the rank." All three looked around to see what other battles were going on. Sand and dust gathered behind the group, forming the shape of a body clad in blue armor. None of them realized it until it was too late, and the knife was already in motion. Zabuza's eyes widened as his sensitive ears picked up a faint sound behind him. A.N. I was tempted to put a fake A.N. here to make you all uncomfortable, but that would be too cruel even for me. So, I'll end this fictitious A.N. here and let you continue with the story. Laughing face. Shino drew his kama and summoned his insect allies, who formed a sphere around him. Their chakra sensing abilities allowed him to detect the Shodai Hokage's movements, his kama moving to intercept the incoming blows. Kurenai was preparing her genjutsu assault behind him, while Anko smirked ferociously, drew her blades, and moved to support Shino, the only one fast enough to catch up thanks to her speed training. Hashirama charged at the team's weakest link, Shino, ready to kill the young genin. He was cut off by Anko's flashing blades, as her arms transformed into bladed whips, her skeletal structure changing to that of a snake. Hashirama ignored her, unconcerned about the risks of being struck because he was already dead. It was a mistake, though, because Anko hadn't kept only poisons in her daggers. She poohed a bit of chakra into the proper seals as her blades struck the revived Hokage, unsealing a potent explosive mixture she and Ibiki had once made. It appeared to be a red paste that became lodged inside Hashirama's wounds. The bug user charged and tried to grab him just as he was about to reach Shino. Shino was able to grab Shodai despite the surprise caused by this unexpected move. Shino's form disintegrated into a swarm of insects before the Cage could react, leaving only Shodai's form covered in explosive seals. Shino appeared behind Anko, his hands already in the ram seal. Boom. The Showdown Hokage was blown apart as the explosive seals in the paste Anko had gotten inside his wounds combined to create a pyre in the place of their former foe. Senju Hashirama was a cage, so it couldn't have been that simple, both Anko and Shino thought. Only seconds before the first Hokage burst forth, Anko's heat sight caught a figure in the ground, his arm a spear of wood. Neither she nor Shino would have survived the attack if it hadn't been for Kurenai's quick thinking in wrapping the incoming spear in ninja wire and tearing it apart. It only slowed the cage, but it was enough for Anko to grab Shino and shunshun them away. Shino allowed a small smirk to form on his lips, but he had placed a female bug on Hashirama, so he could always track him now. Shodai, on the other hand, had other plans, as he went through some quick hand seals before slapping his hands on the ground, dense trees and vegetation coming to life and changing the battlefield to suit his needs. Vines burst from the woods around them, trapping the group, while sharpened wood spikes and spears tried to take their lives. While Kurenai was looking for the cage, Shino's dual kama were quickly reinforced with wind chakra, making quick work of everything around him. Shino, thankfully, dealt with any and all Mokuton attacks on the group. The mantis blades had a difficult time working because the cage's reserves would not run out before theirs. Kurenai found Shodai after several seconds of desperate cutting and dodging, his form and chakra clouded by the natural energies around her. She quickly pointed Anko in his direction, the blade-wielding assassin dashing to take him out. Anko's blades flashed once more, but this time there were 6, as Anko's increased reserves allowed her to use the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Hashirama didn't have time to dodge with so many blades, as Shino's insect allies attacked him, leeching his chakra and giving it to the group. Anko took advantage of the chaos by wrapping her 2 clones around Hashirama. She sealed her daggers and made a few hand seals before kicking him skyward. The jutsu came quickly, fueled by the extra reserves in her bracers. Bunshin Daibakuha. Great explosion clone. The cage was blown apart once more, but this time it wasn't a clone but the real thing. Debris fell from the sky around the group as they gathered to confirm that they had indeed killed him. As the group turned to view the other fights, Hashirama's form was being recreated behind a large tree he had previously formed. Hidden spears of sharpened wood were launched towards the unsuspecting trio after a bit of chakra and a hand seal. While the other 2 groups fought, Naruto took a position in front of the old man. He was not only younger and tougher, even with Sandame's armor, but he also had a healing factor. The old man was using a mid-range weapon, while the snake was using a close-range weapon. As a result, Sandame could take advantage of Orochimaru fighting at a range he isn't used to. Naruto prepared himself for combat by forcing his brain to increase his adrenaline flow, knowing that the snake user would not pull any punches this time. This simple chemical would allow Naruto to ignore pain and fatigue while also increasing his speed and strength. Of course, there are risks to overdosing on it, but it was worth it against such a formidable foe. Claws came from the left, like an angry bear's swipe, and the wind itself appeared to be cut by the force behind them. Naruto reversed his motion, sending a claw to Orochimaru's right, this time maintaining momentum and spinning on his right heel, hoping that his body would conceal his intentions. Orochimaru deflected the first slash by bending to the side, then parried the second with his kusanagi. He jumped over the third, readying his sword to pierce Naruto's temple and, hopefully, kill Orochimaru. But before he could, a black and gold staff tip slammed into Orochimaru's forearm with enough force to shatter most people's femur bones, some of the hardest bones to break on the human body. The snake user, for his part, reeled in his hand, fully aware that any injury, no matter how minor, would give his opponents an advantage. They already had an unfair advantage. Orochimaru clicked his tongue in annoyance, hoping that his 2 resurrected slaves would hurry up and kill the upstarts so he could kill the old man in peace. Naruto twisted around the staff, his 2 tails keeping him balanced when anyone else would have fallen off. Naruto used a tail to make a scorpion-like stab after missing due to Orochimaru's dexterity and experience. The snake user retreated from the attack, only for Naruto to raise himself on the lodged tail before leaping at Orochimaru, claws first. Naruto's form ripped right through the unfortunate clone, leaving no time for a Tsuchi Bunshin, Kawarimi combo. Orochimaru spit out some fireballs after performing some one-handed seals. Kaiten. Bikuden. Fire. Explosive blasts. When the flaming orbs collided with the ground, several powerful explosions occurred. A cry came from the dust, warning Orochimaru to avoid it. Sai Dai Kei's Rin, Futen. Wind style. Most powerful wind ring. Orochimaru leaned to the side, expecting to see a pair of wind rings. What surprised him was that through the smoke came a massive ring of wind. Orochimaru used Kawarimi to avoid the blade by clicking his tongue. As he landed, he felt a chakra surge behind him and heard the old man call out a jutsu. Iwa no Kiba, Doten. Earth Fashion. Stone Fangs. The ground shook and opened up, with enormous stalactites thrusting upwards, ready to impale the surprised snake user. An Anbu team stood outside the purple barrier, their jaws agape. That is a true cage-level fight. We just get in the way. And yet these genin are assisting Hokage-sama. How? How are they able to do it? Even Kyuubi hasn't used his demon's power. A new Anbu was terrified. Jiraiya slid behind the group. Of course, they can assist. After all, they all have something you jerks don't. True bravery and guts. They all have different feelings for the old man. That's what gives them the authority to beat up my former teammate. Stop staring and start working. Konoha is still in danger. The Anbu team nodded and dashed away. They had more important things to do than stare at a fight they couldn't win, according to the Toad Sage. They could only hope to see it reenacted at some point. Even the genin within was extremely potent. Back inside the purple dome, Zabuza deflected the brunt of the attack with his cleaver sword. He couldn't deflect it far enough, and it became lodged in his stomach. Hinata responded by making a stabbing motion with her tonfa, blades out. Haku formed a half-ram seal before blowing a freezing wind at the cage, narrowly missing him. Hinata and Haku were both enraged at this point. Zabuza was Haku's adopted father, the first to require her and give her a reason to exist. She had learned a lot from him, and she had found her home. No resurrected bastard, no matter how strong, could ever take Zabuza away from her. Hinata's thoughts were similar. Despite being a sadist, Zabuza was her sensei. One of the few people who cares about her and gives her time. He tutored her, sparred with her, and assisted her even when she messed up. As Haku snarled, Hinata growled. Zabuza was hit because they were unaware of the threat. Their chakras were heightened, and their emotions were raging. Hinata's chakra felt troubled, like a storm brewing, whereas Haku's felt colder than the coldest eternal glacier, so cold it almost burned with restrained fury. Zabuza felt the need to take a step back behind them. It felt similar when Hinata and Haku were having their time of the month, and someone was stupid enough to irritate them. Hinata and Haku rushed towards the Nidaime, blades flashing, without looking back. Kubikuri Honcho's impressive form was not far behind them, in the hands of its master. The blue-clad resurrected shinobi had to duck Haku's slash in order to face Hinata's electrified tonfa. Zabuza's cleaver went for the kill as he threw himself away. Tobirama was unable to escape completely because he was still in the air, but he was able to shift his body just enough to lose an arm. The three shinobi were shocked as his arm appeared to regenerate from ambient dust. Nidaime's arm was restored in a matter of seconds, and he dashed, ready to take down his targets. Zabuza intercepted him with a quick slash, forcing Cage to leap over it before kicking him in the face. Haku moved above the cage, her sword glowing a frozen blue and aimed at the exposed neck. Naidame finished his kick quickly, using Zabuza as a springboard to jump off and dodge. Hinata's form appeared behind him as the blow landed, her tonfa placed so the Cage would stab himself, even as Hinata sent a burst of chakra to the Cage's hara, Japanese for belly button, also the center of the chakra coils, not a good place to get Jayukened at. Hinata's chakra rushed into Nidame's body before exploding with great force at a mental command. Hinata panted slightly, still unaccustomed to moving at such high speeds. Medical chakra rushed to her aching muscles, easing the pain. However, the Nidame's exploded hara appeared to regenerate once more. Hinata's eyes closed in concentration as her right hand formed a half ram seal. Hinata concentrated her mind on her target, her Byakugan revealing minute details about her target. Her breathing slowed to a halt, and her eyes and mind focused solely on one thing. Cage, resurrected, is repairing himself. Hinata concentrated harder and harder, until even time slowed to a crawl, the Cage frozen in mid-strike. Hinata's Byakugan pulsated with strength. Hinata would have been surprised if she wasn't in such a deep trance, but in her current state, she didn't even raise an eyebrow. Color now filled her Byakugan. Chakra was no longer a uniform light blue hue, but varied slightly for each individual. She could see everyone's chakra, from Naruto's barely contained wind and fire to Shino's calm focus to Orochimaru and the two Cages' corrupted power. What's that? She pondered. As if they were the same being, the three shared chakra. Naturally, she realized that the resurrected Cage had been brought here by Orochimaru's jutsu. However, in order for it to function for so long, they would require a focus. If she could only locate it. Hinata's eyes widened, the frozen moment over. She quickly turned to face her combatants. It's the seal. Naidame-sama is possessed by a seal. We must destroy it as well as his body at the same time, or he will regenerate. To completely destroy his body, we need a powerful attack. Not even a speck of dust is allowed to escape. Zabuza muttered. He had a sneaking suspicion. But where would they look for such an assault? All three of them used Futon. They couldn't just annihilate his body like that. They needed a Kaiten expert. Zabuza's pupils dilated. That's it. The impediment. Throw him at the barrier with all your might. Haku and Hinata both nodded, understanding what he meant. However, the Suiten master refused to let them do it. He called out his technique as he sped through some hand seals. Kokwangyo no Jutsu. If I'm not mistaken, this is the piercing darkness technique. As the technique took effect, the light dimmed for the three warriors. All three attempted to use Kai to remove the genjutsu, but it was ineffective. They quickly realized that this was a ninjutsu, not a genjutsu. However, the Naidame had not anticipated anything. He wasn't the only one who could fight while blindfolded. Zabuza had been fighting in this manner since he was a genin. Haku was well versed in it, having frequently fought within Zabuza's mist. Hinata had also learned Kirigakure no Jutsu, hidden in the mist technique, knowing it would be useful for her Byakugan. All three focused their attention by closing their eyes and sending chakra to their ears and skin, becoming extremely sensitive to sound and vibrations. Tobirama charged at the immobile pair, hoping to end this fight quickly before they killed him. He was taken aback when they moved to intercept him. Sure, their performance had dropped, but it was nowhere near what he had expected. Before unleashing his jutsu, he leapt back and made several hand seals. Water style. Suiruden no Jutsu. Haku sped through hand seals as well, knowing she was the best match for him. Haryu Moko, Hyeten. Dragon ripping frozen tiger in ice style. Haku's jutsu rushed at the unwary Cage, catching him off guard. Nidame's lower body froze, immobilizing him. Haku summoned her teammates. Deizu Ima. Zabuza-sama. Kanbi-san Hyoryu. Now. Zabuza-sama. Combination of three frozen dragons. Zabuza grunted as he sped through a number of handseals with his cleaver stabbed on the ground. He used up the rest of his blade's chakra reserves before finishing the jutsu with his own chakra. Haku used her own half-ram seal next to him. She knew it was all or nothing after taking a soldier pill and still being exhausted. They would either defeat the Nidame or fail. Haku pushed the last of her chakra into her jutsu, pushing thoughts of failure out of her mind, including images of Shino being hurt because she wasn't strong enough. Santorudan no jutsu, please. Water technique. Triple-headed dragon blast. Hyokaze. Ice style. Freezing wind. Haku's Kekkei Genkai stopped Zabuza's Sweeten Assault as the two jutsu combined. The immobilized cage was slammed by the frozen dragons. The only reason the cage stayed where he was because he was frozen solid before he could be thrown away. The ice pressure around him, however, would have instantly turned any other human to mush, cage or not. The ice, however, had one more effect. The chakra layer blocked Tobirama's chakra for a split second, dispelling his darkness technique. Tobirama was frozen solid by the time he regained control of his chakra, unable to perform the handseals for it. Hinata appeared in front of him, tonfa blazing with power as the cage's resistance cracked the outer layer. Hinata knew what she had to do as soon as she heard Haku's command. Taking a pair of soldier pills, she withdrew her entire reserves from her tonfa, overcharging her coils, knowing full well what they would do to her already strained coils. Using her supreme control, she forced the excess chakra out of her body, forming a sort of armor around her. The armor, on the other hand, would quickly deplete its reserves, making every second count. Hinata, on the other hand, needed the extra chakra now because she wouldn't have time to withdraw it from her tonfa while attacking. Tobirama witnessed a terrifying sight as the darkness faded. Hinata stood in front of him, her chakra forming a shield. It quickly stabilized, and if Tobirama survived, he'd be left with his jaw hanging. A spectral tiger had formed around Hinata, its maw open and eyes filled with fury and power. The Hokage didn't have time to think about it because he was being attacked by Hinata's blazing tonfa. Byako. Tonfa accelerated, stabbing at Cage's body, ripping out his joints. Chakra slammed his chakra coils with great force, closing them down and almost cauterizing them. Lightning flashed through Cage's body, melting the ice while electrocuting him and frying his nerves. Even Haku was taken aback by Hinata's speed. 62 strikes landed on Cage's body, each one more powerful than the one before it. Number 63 was an uppercut, the force of which ripped Cage from his frozen cage. As Hinata cocked her arm back, her entire chakra gathered at her right tonfa. To everyone who looked, her fist appeared to have a tiger's head on it. Moui. Furious. Boom. Hinata's tonfa slammed into the cage with exploding force, her chakra sending a powerful shockwave from the exploding force. As the cage's body was blasted away with terrifying force, slamming on the purple barrier, it felt like a dummy. Hinata collapsed to her knees, her strength dwindling. Her eyes closed, her world dimming, and she saw one last thing before succumbing to unconsciousness. Senju Tobirama, the Nidame Hokage, smiles proudly. Shino had been forced to dodge on the other side of the dome, just in time to spin in a defensive motion, his kama cutting the rising spikes. Anko's quick reflexes allowed her to push Shino and Kurenai aside. She, on the other hand, was not so fortunate and was impaled through the chest. Anko, on the other hand, ripped herself free before long, her wounds closing and her clothes mending themselves. Her eyes glowed with righteous rage. "You bastard, that hurt." Shino and Kurenai would have laughed if they hadn't grown accustomed to Anko's antics. Hashirama wasted no time in launching an attack with wooden spears to lure the group into a trap he had set for them. Shino, like Anko and Kurenai, could barely keep up with the spears and vines coming from every direction. Anko, on the other hand, was better off because her contortionist-like body allowed her to avoid rather than cut and block. Shino's eyes widened imperceptibly behind his glasses as they were pushed back. Almost instantly, countless wooden planks rose from the earth and formed a dome before curving to the center and forming a completely closed-off dome.
Kurenai and Shino could only watch in horror as what appeared to be oversized rose thorns the size of a man's arm grew outwards from within the dome.
The same thorns were launched at the pair a split second later. Tobirama let the dome collapse after hearing the cries of pain, before making a sharpened staff out of hard wood and charging the still horrified Anko. However, ninja wire was wrapped around him just as he was about to approach her. A coated form appeared in front of Hashirama, holding two kama. After a burst of chakra, the form was behind the cage. Shodai's arms fell off as he managed to raise them despite the wire that bound him, using them to deal with the brunt of the attack. Anko, Kurenai, and Shino looked on in morbid fascination as the cage mended himself from what appeared to be dust. When Shino saw this, his mind went into overdrive, trying to think of ways to counter it, knowing they couldn't defeat an enemy who couldn't bleed or die. He replayed everything he saw Orochimaru do in his mind, comparing it to his tiny ally's chakra readings. Thankfully, despite deflecting the majority of his last attack, Shodai was able to land a number of Kikai on him. It wasn't enough to drain him, but it was enough to map out his body for Shino. Shino dashed for cover and closed his eyes, knowing that his teammates would keep Shodai's attention on him while he solved this puzzle. It seemed impossible at first, until he remembered Naruto's words, "Nothing is impossible if you believe enough in it." Anko would have made a joke about Shino's brain cooking itself alive with this enigma, but she was too busy fighting a cage-level opponent to think about it. Kurenai's genjutsu attacks aided her greatly because, even though Shodai would almost immediately release them, they still gave Anko the precious little time she needed to escape danger. Shino was still thinking when he noticed something. Shodai had too much chakra coursing through his mind, and because of Naruto's fascination with seals, he recognized the patterns as seal-induced. That meant Shodai had a seal inside his head, which opened the door to it controlling or keeping the cage in the living realm. Getting that seal out would be critical for them. Shino realized, however, that in order to be certain it was gone, they would also need to completely destroy the body, lest the seal regenerated itself like the body. He quickly spoke to his insect allies, instructing them to silently deliver the message to the women fighting the cage. Shino charged at the Shodai Hokage after taking a deep breath to center himself. He was forced to dodge to the side just seconds later as the plant life itself attacked him. Shino rushed at the cage's location, pushing chakra into his limbs to increase his speed. He saw him sink into the trees he had created before he arrived. He had to avoid being impaled by a sharpened spear almost immediately as the cage emerged from another tree. Shino's analytical mind was still at work on this. He was well versed in every jutsu known to Anko and Kurenai. Neither of them had the necessary firepower. She could have tried to reinforce a Kaden with food and chakra if they had Haku, but they couldn't. Shino had an inspiration. Use the enemy's resources if you can't use your own. He noticed the purple flame barrier while looking around. Knowing what it was capable of, he knew it possessed the necessary damage potential after witnessing an Anbu attempt to penetrate it. Hopefully. He communicated the plan to his team after clearing his mind. Of course, leading a cage who can warp through trees in a densely forested area isn't easy. The insect user feared the worst when he saw the cage form hand seals before slamming his hands on the ground and sensed chakra gathering around Kurenai. Poisonous thorny vines sprouted from the ground, ready to wrap around her and kill her. Shino quickly formed his Kama staff, then sent chakra into the Futana rays and threw it at Kurenai. Wire wrapped around it would allow him to remove the dangerous vines without injuring Kurenai. Shino felt a presence behind him as the weapon sped in an ominous circle of blades, and managed to dodge just in time before a Moku Bunshin, wood clone, managed to give him a powerful punch to the spine, possibly breaking it. However, he had to let go of his weapon in order to dodge, hoping Kurenai had managed to free herself. Instead, he concentrated on dodging the enemy before pulling out a pair of kunai and impaling it on the head. Shino thanked Kami for pointing out that, while Moku Bunshins were tough, they were also slow and lacked skill. Meanwhile, Anko and Kurenai were fighting hard to avoid being beaten by the Shodai. He was nearly as fast and strong as Anko, but he had far more experience and a much faster regeneration rate. Anko realized for the first time how much it sucked to have an enemy with greater regeneration abilities than Naruto. Fortunately, the two kunoichi weren't Junin for no reason. They had put in a lot of practice time, both alone and together, and had a lot of experience and teamwork. Kurenai's flight array was also a lifesaver, allowing her to dodge in insane ways when necessary. She couldn't fly properly, but she could glide and jump high. Kurenai was struggling next to her, as her poisons were ineffective against someone who didn't have blood. Using explosives was also out because he could simply regenerate somewhere else. Her Kaiten list was ineffective as well. She had a pair of B-ranked Kaiten and an A rank, but he was a Kage who could completely control the environment. He'd have a backup strategy, a defense, and a wealth of experience to fall back on. Not to mention powerful ninjutsu she had no way of predicting. For a long time, the trio fought, taking and giving blows, the fight hanging in the balance, until the balance broke. Moving to defend Kurenai, Shino was snagged by an unnoticed vine and slammed to the ground. Kurenai dashed to catch him before he became incapacitated, only to be impaled in the stomach by a wooden spear. Anko went completely still. Kurenai and Shino, her friend and student, had been hurt. Were they dead? Had she lost someone to the snake tyrant who had taken so much from her? Kyubi growled. The bug user was both an ally and a naturalist. The red-eyed Junin was always nice to his container. He approached Anko after sensing her fear. Anko, don't cry. Please do not cry. This is not a warrior's way, your way. This jerk has dared to take someone from you. Anko, rip him apart. Unleash heinous vengeance on the fool who stole them from you. I will. I will. Anko turned to face Shodai, her eyes murderous. Anko was frequently enraged, but never with such intensity. It burned within her, almost inflicting pain but instead providing her with strength. As Kyubi's power passed through Anko, her eyes turned red and slit. Kyubi. Grant me more power. I will avenge them and return this piece of shit to the hell that spawned him. Yukai surged through Anko, becoming stronger with each passing second. Shodai prepared his jutsu for the impending attack. Anko charged, her blades flashing in a dazzling display of silver, shredding the incoming Mokuton apart. Shodai attempted to use a Kawarimi, but Anko detected him. He was brutally kicked and thrown out of his forest before he could move. Anko was on him in an instant, her rage almost freezing him. Shodai raced for the seals to stop the Yukai, but he was too late. Anko vanished behind him, her blades cutting the tendons and muscles that moved his arms. She made a pivot and flashed her blades at his spinal cord, severing it. Shodai, on the other hand, never had the chance to fall down or repair his body because Anko unleashed her full fury on him. Anko unleashed a torrent of blows and slashes, his daggers flaming from the fire arrays on them. The flashing blades left no room for defense, counter, or parry, whether left, right, top, or bottom. Shodai could only stiffen his muscles in an attempt to reduce the damage, but the flaming blades cut right through him like a knife through warm butter. Anko's flashed in an infinity symbol pattern, hacking and incinerating her adversary at the same time. Anko reversed her grip and slashed Shodai's throat, removing his voice. Twisting her fingers, she sent a double impale right into his kidneys before reversing her grip and gutting him like a pig. Anko's daggers had reversed again before stabbing Shodai in the temples before the Shodai could move. Anko drew her blades and fell back. She dashed to the murderer of her friend, charging her feet with as much Yukai as she could handle, which wasn't a small amount. She leapt forward 3 steps before her target, both feet striking the cage with tremendous force. Hashirama was thrown backwards like a flaming sack of potatoes before collapsing with enough force to send a shockwave through the barrier. After his seal was burned, he barely had time to smile sadly before his body disintegrated and his spirit went to rest. Anko smiled as the Shodai Hokage was burned alive before remembering her friends and rushing to them. Anko wiped her tears away and felt for a pulse in both of them. Orochimaru barely avoided the rising spikes, only to gulp as 10 Naruto Kage Bunshin emerged from the smoke and dust his explosions had created. Orochimaru couldn't avoid all of the clones with their claws out and moving at high speeds. Despite being forced to change skins once, he was able to expel the clones. Orochimaru smirked at Naruto and Sarutobi while wearing a confident mask on his face. "Well, it appears that you have been working hard. But you can't beat me, sensei. I'm on a completely different level than you two. Even if I were inside my original body, you couldn't hurt me." Sarutobi and Naruto's eyes widened before narrowing. Orochimaru evilly chuckled before raising his hand to his face, his fingers grabbing something. "See now? What fool would oppose me?" Orochimaru then removed his own mask, revealing the face of a young woman. The snake user chuckled at the disgusted looks he received. Naruto, on the other hand, wasn't about to let that jerk out creep him. "She's even putting on makeup. Guess that's where you got your gay pedophile trend." Orochimaru was enraged by Naruto's words. "I honestly don't know which is worse. You can't stand being gay and having to change your body in order to belong, or the fact that you believe immortality is a good thing. Oroteme, believe me when I say that being immortal isn't fun. After all, I am one as well. My body has long since rid itself of the flaw of age. Trust me when I say I'd give it up for my friends any day." Orochimaru was at a loss for words. Hate for Naruto, not only for outdoing him, but also for speaking to him or desiring him in such a way, knowing that with Naruto's perfect body, he wouldn't have to switch ever again. However, a small part of Orochimaru, trapped beneath waves and waves of hatred, did something else. That part admired Naruto's tenacity, virtues, and spirit strength. That part became increasingly aware of its own demise and began to yearn for freedom. Unaware of this, Orochimaru simply chuckled darkly to mask his discomfort. "That's why I need you by my side so badly. Naruto-kun, please accompany me. If you do, I will not only spare your friends, but I will also bestow upon you great power and a true home. However, if you do not accompany me, your beloved friends will suffer beyond measure or imagination. Now follow me, Naruto-kun. Come with me to seize your destiny." Orochimaru's speech made Naruto laugh. "I'm brave as hell. I know exactly who you are. That is precisely why I will not be joining you. That's why. I'm going to murder you." Naruto charged Orochimaru, his claws flashing left and right, Sandame's spinning staff accompanying them, forcing the snake Sennin to retreat. Orochimaru growled. His adversaries would not give him enough time to use his extremely powerful jutsu. He couldn't afford to waste time on hand seals because claws would rip through him in seconds. Sandame's staff moved quickly and precisely, even as he drew explosives to throw at his errant student. Sandame provided chakra cheap cover for Naruto's relentless assault by using normal explosive tags and spheres, knowing that Orochimaru wouldn't be hindered by smoke or poison. Sarutobi was once again taken aback by Naruto's fighting ability and instincts. He dodged and weaved, blocked and parried with ease, adapting and improvising at the drop of a hat and keeping his opponent at bay. Of course, Naruto couldn't have done it alone, but with Sandame's timely and precise interference, the two of them would tire out Orochimaru before dispatching him. Orochimaru noticed his predicament and unleashed a swarm of snakes while he dodged and countered. The brat's claws flashed with incredible speed, cutting them out before they could even approach him. Orochimaru made a few hand seals while dodging Naruto's flashing claws before sending out a lightning bolt, seeing the futility of this approach. He hoped at the very least that this jutsu would be effective. For his part, Naruto cursed. Naruto wasn't as resistant to electrical attacks as he was to Kaden because Konoha lacked lightning users. He also couldn't defend with a Doton or Suiden because the lightning would just rip right through them. Seeing no other option, Naruto summoned Kyuubi's chakra to avoid the attack. Dengeki, Raiden. Lightning Strike. Lightning Style. Naruto, who had turned into a crimson blur, dashed forward in a risky maneuver, changing some of his Yukai to wind. He was within striking distance of Orochimaru after ducking under the jutsu. But, as Orochimaru predicted, it wasn't going to be that simple. He quickly replaced himself with a floor tile before stabbing his Kusanagi right into Naruto's belly. Orochimaru twisted the blade, causing Naruto to scream in pain before almost severing Naruto in half. Raising his sword to decapitate the blonde menace, he was forced to backtrack as Sandaime charged in to defend Naruto. Sandaime observed Orochimaru's movements and predicted what he would do. He was, however, too late to warn his adopted grandchild. Cursing, he charged forward, his staff poised to deflect the blow. Orochimaru's eyes widened as he noticed Sandaime's energy. Sarutobi, for one, was smirking on the inside. Naruto's medical seal had released a small amount of combat chemicals to boost performance. Sarutobi twirled his staff around himself, lashing out at the Tsuchi Bunshin, mud clones, that rose to attack him, before smashing the head of a poisonous serpent sent by Orochimaru. Hiruzen leapt at Orochimaru, his staff creating a barrier in front of him, moving more like a monkey than a human. A pair of clones charged at Orochimaru's form from behind the barrier. They caught him off guard and stabbed him with a pair of explosive kunai. Orochimaru's legs were blown off in an instant by a pair of explosions. Orochimaru grew a snake-like tail and increased his speed as he moved in for the kill, leaving Sarutobi with no time to rejoice. A red and black blur moved behind Orochimaru, cutting off his tail, before the surprised Kage could defend himself. In response, their foe morphed into mud, and another Orochimaru emerged from the ground beneath Sandaime. Sandaime, for his part, performed a few hand seals. Dai Enden, Kaden. Fire type. Fantastic Fire Bullet. Orochimaru's surprised expression was incinerated by fire. Sarutobi and Naruto were treated to the sight of scorched snakeskin after the fire had died down. A silvery flash flashed towards Sandaime from underground. Naruto became aware of the vibrations and rushed to defend his grandfather figure. As a result, the Kusanagi sword slashed right into Naruto, who collapsed from pain. Orochimaru emerged from the ground, laughing. "See how pointless it is to oppose me. I am a far more powerful being than you could ever imagine. You cannot murder me." Naruto tried in vain to stand, but his feet were too weak. Orochimaru laughed when he saw his struggle. "What? Did you believe you were the only one who could adapt? What naive to copyright. You see, it's not the poison that's causing you harm. It's my chakra, condensed to the point of Yukai. My chakra will still harm you even if you are immune to poison. Sure, it didn't kill you, but it will immobilize you long enough for me to kill this old relic and every fool here. You had been defeated from the start." Naruto snarled as Orochimaru laughed evilly. Naruto stood up and shakily stood on his feet, using Sandaime as a counterweight. Then he said something quietly. "Can you immobilize him when I tell you to? I can't fight him, but I have something planned. It's still experimental, but it's effective. But I need you to immobilize him when I tell you to and then get out of there. Can you pull it off?" Sandaime nodded and prepared himself by gripping his staff. Meanwhile, Naruto shifted his gaze to Orochimaru. "Orochimaru, you may have paralyzed me, but this fight is far from over. Gigi and I are going to teach you something." A body without a soul cannot live, but a soul without a heart cannot live. That's why we're going to eliminate you from the world. Sarutobi fortified himself. It's time for me to put you back in your place, Bakadeshi. You aren't ready to be a master yet, and you never will be. Prepare yourself. Sarutobi dashed forward, diamond staff poised. Orochimaru followed, with Kusanagi in striking position. The two clashed, throwing everything they had at each other. Both, however, knew that Orochimaru would win. Sandame, on the other hand, did not relent, unleashing jutsu after jutsu, strike after strike on his errant student. Orochimaru, for his part, dodged and weaved, unleashing his own assault on the old man. He was slightly disturbed by Naruto's words, but he didn't let it affect him. His vengeance was almost upon him. Naruto made a hand seal behind the two enemies, creating two clones at his side. They stood shakily at first, but they knew what had to be done. Chakra flowed through Naruto from the amulet he wore beneath his clothes. Kyuubi withdrew his Yukai, knowing Naruto would need all the control he could get to survive this. Naruto raised his hands in front of him, palms half open as if something were preventing them from closing. As chakra flared, the clones to the left and right raised their own hands, palms open at the sides of Naruto's own arms. Orochimaru moved quickly, proving that the old man had not lost his touch. He'd gotten better in the last few years, if anything. Orochimaru was barely keeping up with his old sensei, but he knew he'd get tired quickly. When Sarutobi became tired, he would strike and kill the heinous man. Still, he was concerned about the chakra that was forming behind him, but he didn't let it bother him too much. Such chakra would be a wide area technique, so he wouldn't use it while the old man was nearby. Naruto was far too honorable to do such a thing. Meanwhile, chakra had flared, forming two pointed cocoons of energy in Naruto's palms, the two clones gritting their teeth as they tried to contain the power within. As the wind picked up, minute flashes erupted from the swirl of power, obscuring their forms. As he tried to control it, Naruto's arms shook, and a gash appeared on his arm, causing him to grit his teeth in pain while waiting for it to heal. As the chakra began to burn the flesh away, many agonizing seconds passed, each more painful than the last. However, Naruto could feel the power on his hands and couldn't help but resent the fact that he had to use it. He despised the fact that he had to kill yet again. Putting aside his doubts and sadness, Naruto focused on the object of his rage, the jerk who dared to hurt his Ji-san. Naruto's veins were filled with white-hot rage, which was quickly transformed into more determination and focus. It was finally finished. Drills of barely restrained power on Naruto's arms, the barely restrained power shredding his clothes. Naruto opened his mouth and spoke with a tiny amount of concentration. Gigi. Ima da Gigi. Gigi now. In response, the old man accelerated and let go of his staff. The staff reverted to Enma and grabbed Orochimaru, immobilizing him. Sandame performed several lightning-quick hand seals before kicking Orochimaru. Doden. Daichi no Huyu. Means, Earth Style, Earth's Embrace. Sandame's boot ejected mud, which splashed on Orochimaru before covering him and hardening to stone. Orochimaru was covered in stone and nearly immobilized before he knew it. His gaze was drawn to Naruto's ready form, and he realized for the first time what the plan had been. The snake user cursed and moved his partially free right arm to swallow Kusanagi. Orochimaru desperately went through hand seals, pushing his chakra into the technique, using some of the blood Sandame had spilt in their fight. Kuchios. Rishumon. Rashomon, summon. Meanwhile, as Naruto called out his own technique, a massive explosion of chakra erupted from each of his palms. Udama Raisenfuho. Extremely powerful spiral wind cannon. Naruto's attack slammed into the giant demon-faced gate, creating a blinding light. Orochimaru smirked triumphantly behind the gate. This was the ultimate defense strategy. Whatever happened, very few things could get through. It could even withstand a weak Buju's attack. Then something happened. The jutsu collided, and Orochimaru watched in disbelief as the forces contained in the technique tore his Rashomon apart. He barely had time to brace himself as he was ripped off his stony prison, thrown backwards while being ripped apart by the technique's power, only to be slammed with great force right into the purple barrier he had erected to keep Sandaime in. Fortunately for Orochimaru, the henchmen who were holding up the barrier let it fall immediately, saving their leader from incineration. But that doesn't mean he escaped unscathed. Half of Orochimaru's face was burned beyond recognition, while his arms. He used them to keep his head from collapsing against the barrier, so they suffered the most damage. Orochimaru now had scorched stumps instead of arms. Sandaime was ready to charge at him and finish the job. However, the henchmen intervened, two of them picking up their leader while the other two unleashed several jutsu to cover the escape, including sound-based genjutsu and nearly unbreakable spiderwebs. Sandaime summoned a few Anbu to transport the genin to the hospital before heading there himself. Jiraiya landed next to him, his face grim. "Didn't he get away this time, sensei?" "Jiraiya-chan, please correct." However, it appears that he received a souvenir this time. "Now, go look at your godson." "I still don't trust every doctor in that hospital." Jiraiya nodded and walked away as Sarutobi examined Konoha. The will of fire is not easily extinguished. Even if a tiny spark survives, it grows stronger than ever before. I wish you had studied his Baka Deshi. You could have been fantastic.
That's it for today. If you enjoy this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.